Hereby call to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, November 4th, 2024. Mr. City Manager, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Ratten.
Here.
Councilmember Schroeder.
Here.
Councilmember Groff.
Here.
Councilmember Strawn.
Here.
Mayor Rowe.
Here. And with us by way of introductions at the dais, we have our City Attorney Rachel Tierney, who's on my right at the far end of the dais, and our City Manager Pat Trudgeon is on my left at the other end. We will have other staff and guests participating in the meeting as as agenda items come up, or as events come up, and those folks will be introduced at those times. Want to remind folks, if you have a cell phone, to silence it or otherwise assure that it doesn't disrupt the meeting. We do have a copy of all the meeting materials in a binder on the back table if folks from the public need to reference any of the materials. You do have to share, however, because we have one copy of that. And then we have multiple copies that you can have of the agenda to help you follow along with the meeting, also on the back table under the big clock by the back door. With that, we'll get into more procedural things, but want to make sure we always, as we do, start each meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'll ask folks to stand if you're able. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next on our agenda is considering approval of tonight's agenda, and as always, I'll start with Mr. Trudgeon. Are there any staff requested changes to the agenda this evening?
Mr. Mayor, staff has no changes to the agenda.
All right. Are there any council requested changes to the agenda or any items on the consent agenda that council members would like removed for separate consideration? Does not appear to be the case. We'll do a quick check with the public as well. We have one part of our agenda at the very end called Section 10, the approval of the consent agenda. There are a handful of items on there that are usually taken up as a single motion at the very end of the meeting. But if anybody is here now for one of those items, if you let us know, we can move that item earlier in the meeting so that you can ask your question or make your comment related to that item. So we'll double check with folks. Is there anyone here for an item in our consent agenda, Section 10 at the bottom of page 1 of the agenda, approval of payments, etc.? Does not appear to be the case. With that, then, a motion to approve the agenda as presented would be in order.
Second.
Been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Strawn. Discussion on that motion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have our agenda for this evening. Next on tonight's agenda is public comment. This is our first opportunity of several during the meeting for public comment. This is specifically related to items that are not on tonight's agenda, but may be of interest to people in the community or related to city business. And once again, with general public comment, the same rules apply to regular or public comment during other items of the agenda, which is a 3-minute time limit per speaker. We ask that you identify your name and either your street or your address for identification purposes, address comments and questions to the council. If there's a response that we can give tonight, we'll attempt to do that, but oftentimes further follow-up or staff follow-up is needed, and the council will generally direct that at this time. With that, I'll open it up for public comment, and feel free to come on up. Hello and welcome.
Welcome. My name is Greg Schrader. I live at 2646 Matilda Street. I am a retired civil engineer, and also I was a council member seated in those seats in 2002 through 2005. Things don't look that different. And I got to say, finally, at the end, the most important thing right now for me is that I'm a Santa Claus. I do Santa Claus. I am a volunteer Santa at several of the senior housing units in the area. So we got 4 of them so far this year. We're working on some more if we can. I'm here to express our neighborhood's concern with the proposed County Road C project inclusion of a mid-block crossing and an 8-foot wide bituminous trail. I have some overheads. They're also in your packet that I left for you when you came. Yeah, that actually works out pretty good. This is the existing County Road C, we have 2 lanes in each direction with a 5-foot boulevard and a 5-foot walk. If you look at the proposed project is that the county is proposing is to reduce it down from 4 lanes to 3 lanes with 1 lane in each direction and a center turn lane. They are also including 2 6-foot wide bike lanes. There's a 5-foot boulevard on the south side, which is Acorn Park, and a 5-foot concrete sidewalk there. The proposed project is going to also add is a 5-foot boulevard on the north side and an 8-foot bituminous trail. There we go. I made up this aerial view of the area. Hopefully you can see it okay. This is the kind of whitish area here in the middle is County Road C, Acorn Park to the south. This, if you can see the yellow line, which you can't see, the thing is the 5-foot concrete walk that's existing right now. And the pink line that comes across on the north side is the 8-foot bituminous trail. And these kind of look little weird things. Those are our mid-block pedestrian crossings. My house is right here, 2646 Matilda Street. I attended both of the public open houses, and I tried to get an understanding of what this 8-foot trail was for. They couldn't really give me an answer that I understood, and maybe I just didn't quite understand it, I'm not sure. But we know it's not for bikes, but hopefully it's not for bikes because we have 2 bike lanes in the road that are adjacent to it, so there's no purpose for that. Is it for pedestrians? Well, we have a concrete sidewalk on the south side, so we already are moving pedestrians in this area with a sidewalk. If it is to move pedestrians, the only means that it can move pedestrians is to get them to the mid-block crossings. At the public meeting, I was told by the representatives there that the residents along Farrington would come to this intersection. They would not cross at that intersection. They would then take this 8-foot wide bituminous trail over here to this mid-block crossing, cross it, and then come on back. The residents along Farrington said they would never do that. They would not use that facility. There would be no need. They have a legal crossing here, and they would continue to use that crossing and cross at that location. Similar activities occur over here on Gaultier. If you're coming down Gaultier, they don't want you to cross the road there. They want the residents of Gaultier to come to this mid-block crossing, cross and go into the park in this direction. They also indicated they would not use that path to get to that pedestrian crossing and would just continue to use the intersection as it is. Same thing with the residents of Matilda. They would make us come over here to this location, come across, go over here to get in the park. No way we're going to do that. We're going to continue to move forward with that. I have to remind everybody, if you don't know, which hopefully you do know, is that every intersection is a
You're a
legal
little bit
crossing.
over time, so if you can kind of get to the gist of your comments. I hate to rush you, but
No, that's fine. That's fine. There's 2 things that I want to bring back to everybody's attention because we're trying to figure out why they're proposing these 2 things. And they don't want us to use the intersections. But if you look at the design that they're putting forward, they have a 6-foot wide bike lane on either side, so residents or pedestrians can come up to the road, cross into the road, and stand in the bike path as a safe zone, then cross when traffic would allow into another safe zone in the center of the road. So again, their own design is negating the use of the mid-block pedestrian crossings and such. I wanted to find out what the other residents in the area thought, so I put together a petition. And that's the main thrust of what we're trying to do today, and it kind of works, sorry. I thought I would create an area that was representative of the area, yet was manageable for me to knock on doors. What I did is I knocked on the doors on Farrington, Matilda, and Gaultier. There's 94 properties in this zone. 6 of them are vacant residences, so they're not being used, and so basically, I was looking at knocking on 88 doors. 62 of them responded. And of those 62 who responded, 100% of those people said that they would do not want a trail, path, or sidewalk along the north side of County Road C. They indicated the existing sidewalk on the south side is sufficient. They also, 100% of those that responded to my knock indicated that they do not want and they will not use the mid-block crossings. They stated they would continue to use the crosswalks and the crossings at the streets that they have. I'd like to finally add one little comment if I could. I've lived in the
Very
area.
briefly.
Thank you. I've lived in the area for 38 years, in the existing house that I'm in right now. I've never had an issue crossing County Road C. My family's never had an issue crossing County Road C. Why they're proposing this, I have no idea. What I'm asking you now is that if you would kindly pass some kind of a resolution to tell the county that, basically the residents don't want it. We need action out of the county, out of the city right now. The reason I'm asking for your action now is that the project is going into final design in 2025. If we don't want to waste money on design and other costs for this, we need to move now. And the resolution that I'm looking for is the one that I have up here. It's based on the neighborhood request. Mm-hmm. We're requesting the city to direct the county to eliminate the proposed mid-block crossing and to eliminate the 8-foot trail.
All right, thank you. And we have a copy of the petition that you provided to us as
Yes.
part of the information you gave us, so we
Yep.
appreciate that. My suggestion is that we look to try to get this on an upcoming council agenda and let the neighbors know when that meeting is.
Certainly.
All right, thank you.
Hopefully
Thank you,
we
Mr.
don't take
Traeger.
too long on it because, like I said, the county's going to continue on moving on it.
Sure.
And we need to help them out as well as us.
Got it. Thank you. Is there other general public comment this evening? Yes. Hello, welcome.
Thanks. My name is Tim Gavretsky. I live at 2645 Gaultier Street, right on the corner of County Road C and Gaultier, across from Acorn Park. And we moved into the city 3 years ago. And just acknowledging this is my first city council meeting, first time I think seeing any of you. And so I want to start by just thanking you for your service to our community, to our city. My wife and I love living here. It's been a great place for us to have our two beautiful daughters. We got another on the way. We're excited to continue to grow our family in the city, especially at the parks that we have. It's a great place to be. We go to the library every week. So just thank you for your service. I think you go, a lot of the work you do goes unthanked, as my past 3 years are an example of. And I just want to echo again.
No pressure.
No pressure, right? I just want to echo what Greg said. So we live right at that corner. My wife stays at home all day with our kids. She sees more than I think anyone in the community, just the interactions of the city at that intersection in Acorn Park. I think the crosswalks were put there in their original place by design. They're right next to the parking lots to the park. They make a lot of sense where they are. And if we move the crosswalks, people are going to continue to overflow park in the streets, and they're going to keep crossing where the existing crosswalks are. And the addition of an 8-foot trail would go into our property, and that 8-foot path that any strangers could go up and down is within feet of my 3-year-old's bedroom. And that gives me some discomfort. In my backyard where they play, unsupervised with a fence, strangers could be walking by talking to them, and that just gives us a lot of discomfort. So just want to come and echo Greg's plea that you would relay that to the county on our behalf. So thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Great. Is there anyone else for general public comment this evening? All right. Seeing no one, thank you again for bringing this forward. And like I said, we'll get it scheduled as soon as we can on a council agenda and let the neighbors know that that's the case. All right. With that, then, we'll move from public comment into the rest of our agenda this evening. We do have, under recognitions and donations, we do have acceptance of general donations to the Park and Recreation Department, and we have Matt Johnson, our Park and Rec Director, here this evening to recognize and accept and ask us to accept those donations. Welcome, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And Assistant Director Anderson is with me for the next agenda item. We just thought we'd spare the bouncing around. But thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Council, of course. If I can find my correct slide here and maybe get our slides up on the main screen. There we go, perfect. Again, we just wanted to, if I can get myself in order, as you know, we do periodically, we do bring back a list of donations that have come into the city's Parks and Recreation system. And as a reminder, of course, the city is required to officially accept the donations, and staff are prohibited from soliciting donations. This means that the donations that were included in your packet, which amount to a total of 18 donations for a total of $60,824.85, were all brought to us by residents and groups who simply have concern about improving our parks and recreation system and making Roseville a better place. The screen in front of you shows a sampling of some of the projects that were completed with these donation dollars, and is a reflection of the commitment that our residents and these groups have to improving our community and ensuring that everybody who lives, works, and visits Roseville has access to outstanding parks and recreation opportunities. So with that, we do have a complete resolution in your packet, but I wanted to at least recognize and show our strong appreciation to all of the donors and groups who contributed to making our Parks and Recreation system a great place. So I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. And it's worth noting also that in addition to the resolution, we also do have the list of all the donors.
Correct, yes.
And their contributions in the packet as well. So that's important to note. And there are a lot of them, and so we appreciate all the work on behalf of either organizations affiliated with the park system who have done a lot of fundraising and a lot of work to put into thinking about what projects to support each year, and we appreciate all their efforts, but also a lot of individuals and companies in the community that have made contributions as well. So we really do appreciate all of those. Are there questions from the council on this item? All right, we do have the request to pass the resolution that is the attachment in the packet accepting those donations. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Bratton, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder to adopt the resolution accepting the donations as outlined. Discussion on that motion as the maker of the motion, Councilmember Bratton.
Thank you to all those individuals and groups for supporting our system.
All right, as the seconder, Councilmember Schroeder.
I would echo that. Thank you to the community and everyone who made these donations. We greatly appreciate it.
All right, any other discussion on the motion? Other than probably echoing what's been said already?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. With that, we've got the motion before us to adopt that resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and those donations are accepted. And on a related Parks and Recreation note, the second item under recognitions and donations is to recognize the accreditation of the Parks and Recreation program. And I'll turn it back over to Director Johnson as well as Assistant Director Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council, again. I want to be brief tonight. I know you have a long agenda, and also that we have, it's a busy week ahead of us all in one way, shape, or form, with lots of excitement going on. But I did want to take a moment and just briefly highlight that the city recently did receive our 6th Commission for Accreditation of Parks and Recreation Agency reaccreditation. It is a mouthful, so I'll use the word CAPRA the few other times I say it tonight. But this certification really showcases our community's commitment to high operational standards in our Parks and Recreation offering and provision of top-notch Parks and Recreation system and services. It's a reflection of the commitment not just of staff to outstanding services, but that of the City Council, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and of course Roseville residents and groups, as we just saw in our previous agenda item. The CAPRA program is for high-performing agencies, and it requires all agencies to apply for reaccreditation every 5 years and show their compliance with 154 accreditation standards in order to achieve reaccreditation. Roseville is one of only 4 accredited agencies in the state of Minnesota and one of roughly 200 nationwide. The National Recreation and Parks Association isn't able to send somebody here to present. So we do have just a brief 4-minute video I want to showcase that just talks about what the CAPRA program is, and then I will let you go on with your evening. But
We already know that we perform best practices within our agency, but being CAPRA accredited really ensures that we're doing the right thing for the right reasons and in the right ways.
Being accredited really does bring your organization to a top level. So you really meet a rigorous set of standards that sets you apart from other recreation departments who are not accredited. Accreditation actually will sometimes highlight what you're not so great at, and to me I like that because you're learning through the process as well.
We strive to be the best and do the best. We create a body of work, and that body of work has to be applied with excellence, and that excellence comes from standards that's provided by Capra.
We want to be America's premier community here in Henderson, and Capra is the most excellent way to show how we are dedicated to our services in Parks and Recreation for our residents.
We are coming up on our 20th year of accreditation. It is part of our culture. We every day live the accreditation standards shown through the excellence in how we do our programs and how we serve our residents.
We can respond back to the public and say to them, we have the best tools through Capra, through accreditation, that offers the best services to our community.
You know, we are making sure that the community is getting more health and wellness. They're getting more social equity. They're getting all of the pillars of NRPA, and that's really backed up through the Capra process. In addition to that, they're getting good services. They're getting a certain level of pride that they can have in their parks and recreation services and the facilities that we offer and the programs that we offer that you may not get if you're not going through the Capra process, if you're not accredited, if you're not reinforcing over 140 standards of excellence.
Parks and Recreation and the Capra accreditation allows us to be on par, and I would even boast as much to say that sometimes above some of those other vital community services. We're in the community every day. We serve citizens every day, and we're very proud of the fact that accreditation and the process of accreditation helps us be better.
You know, the elected officials are very happy that we're accredited, because if you were the mayor or a council person, what better way to show off your community than mentioning the park system? It's accredited.
There isn't any doubt that Capra does give us an element of added mark of excellence from a group that's really objectively looking at what makes up great parks and recreational facilities and the staffing thereof. Even though we get an awful lot of affirmation from our citizenry and what we provide, that really is the telling tale.
Peoria is proud of the significance of our Capra accreditation. It's an assurance to our residents that we are committed to providing them with the highest quality standards and an ongoing quest to be the best that we can be.
The network of now Capra accredited agencies is growing and growing every year. I would encourage any agency to take the opportunity to go through the self-assessment, to explore the benefits of accreditation. The process itself is a step towards improvement.
Once you have accreditation, it gives you that credibility among peers and other professional organizations that you're following certain standards and you're trying to be the best agency that you can be within your neighborhood, your community, and across the country.
I would encourage other agencies to go through the Capra process, as it brings everybody together. A small or big agency, you're all going towards the same standards and the same process when it comes to Capra. So if you go through this and you have to pull everybody involved, and it's not just one director or one administrator kind of leading the charge, it really does. It brings a sense of camaraderie, it brings a sense of excellence, a sense of continuous improvement that I think can really grow a sense of community within your Parks and Recreation agency from a whole.
All right, and with that, it's a little uncomfortable because it does feel a bit like tooting our own horn here. And that's, as I said, mostly because NRPA can't be here to toot it for us, so to speak. But I do want to reflect what was shared in the end there. This really isn't about Matt Johnson or even Carrie Anderson or our staff, who, of course, did a tremendous amount of work to get us to this point. But it really is about our community's commitment and that of the City Council, that of the Parks and Recreation Commission, and that of our amazing groups that continue to provide insight into making us better. And Capra is our way to sort of put that stamp on it and say we're performing to the highest standard. So I was lucky enough to, in Atlanta last month, receive the official Capra accreditation. There's also a little plaque that is coming in the mail, but this is step one. But again, this belongs to the council and to the commission and our community as much as it does any of us. I do just want to mention that it is a very heavy lift for the staff, and particularly Assistant Director Carrie Anderson, who really led our effort this time around, and even going back to Director Brocky and Director Bierscheid, who have been through this many times. Roseville is one of the few that have been in this for 30 years, and I think it is reflective of what we continue to hear about our system. And so I just thank the council, City Manager Trudgeon, for the support. And with that, I don't have a planned ending, so we'll just end it there. I'll turn it back to you, Mayor Rowe.
Well, thank you, and definitely congratulations to our great Parks and Recreation organization. And I know this is, as you mentioned, a long time activity, and believe it or not, it wasn't right away when I started being mayor that I understood that there was this accreditation process. It took a few years to get to that point of knowing what it was and what it was about, but it's very much a sign of the professionalism and high standards of that part of our organization as a city, and we have those standards across the whole organization, and it's nice to have that recognition. So very much appreciated all the work that goes into it, but also being able to show that as the sign of the quality of our program. So thanks to everyone, and congratulations. They deserve a round of applause, right?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. That then brings us to our business items this evening, and we do have a handful of items, many of which are sort of routine, some of which are routine once a year or so, and then others of which are quite unique to this time that we're in. But we'll get started with maybe one of the more routine ones, which is a public hearing to consider certifying utility charges that have been unpaid in the last quarter to the property tax rolls at the county. And we have our Finance Director, Michelle Petrick, with us this evening to introduce this public hearing and this item. Ms. Petrick.
Thank you. Under our city code, we certify delinquent utility accounts that are more than 90 days past due. And once a year, we certify any unpaid false alarms. All properties were notified, and the payment deadline was September 27th. So attached to the report is a resolution with the current properties that we are certifying to Ramsey County for collection on property taxes in 2025.
Thank you, Ms. Petrick. Are there questions from the council on this item this evening? No. All right, this is a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open the public hearing and ask for members of the public to comment on or if they have questions about these certifications of these unpaid utility bills. Anyone from the public wish to speak at this time? Does not appear to be the case. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing then, and we'll move to council consideration of this particular round of certifications. We do have a resolution in the packet to that effect, attachment 2.
So moved. Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder to approve resolution authorizing certification of those unpaid bills to the Ramsey County office, or Ramsey County for tax collection. That is attachment 2 in the packet. Discussion on the motion as the maker, Councilmember Strawn.
No, I apologize that Ms. Petrick still has no voice. This has been a long time, but no, thank you.
To the extent that you had something to do with it, I understand.
I hope not.
But our sympathies certainly go out to her. Other discussion on the motion as the seconder, Councilmember Schroeder?
No, it's routine and it makes sense. So.
All right, any other discussion on the motion? All right, with that, we have the motion before us to adopt that resolution certifying those unpaid utility and various other charges to the county for collection in 2025. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That resolution is approved. Next on the agenda is the first look at the proposed 2025 fee and administrative penalty schedules. And just by that title, we note a little bit of a change here, which I'm sure Assistant City Manager Olson will bring to our attention with her presentation on this item. Ms. Olson, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Correct. This is one of those items that on an annual basis the City Council reviews. This year is a little bit different. As you know, we're going through a recodification process. Our fee schedule is typically housed in Chapter 3. And what we'd like to do eventually, as part of this recodification process, is pull it out and use it as an appendix. That way it's not actually within the code. So there's a little bit different look to it. The last fee schedule was really difficult to update based on formatting, and it was a little bit of a mess. So what we're trying to do is clean it up a little bit, but also as part of that recodification process, staff had an opportunity to go through the code line by line, pull out any fees that may have been in the city code but weren't in the fee schedule, as well as penalties. The previous fee schedule had a page or two that had administrative penalties, but it didn't encompass all of the penalties that we found throughout our code. So this is an attempt. This is the first draft. I will mention that there are some formatting issues that we need to take care of here. And then I think that there's one other item that forgot to get a strike through in here that we will update as well. But this is the first look at it. I will give you high-level information on it. The information in your packet, the RCA, has more of the details of line by line. But when you look at the document that's attached, I wanted to just make sure that you understood what each section meant. So we're looking at, there's 5 sections to this fee schedule. The first one is administrative penalties. Up here, you're going to see the different columns, the penalty description. If there's a city code that it's specifically referenced to, that's highlighted in column C. The 2024 amount that was in the previous fee schedule is the 2024 column. The 2025 amount is the proposed column. You'll see changes in red. A lot of these were, as I mentioned before, in our code, but not in our schedule. And then if there's additional penalties associated in this specific section, for example, when we're thinking about liquor violations, there might be a monetary fine, but also there is revocation or suspension of licenses. And then the final column is regarding notes, and really tells you if there were changes, what they mean. I'm not going to go through every single line for you in an effort to kind of not bore you to death. But as I mentioned, that information is in your packet. I will note that there, on the penalty schedule, there's no new penalties that are added. And a lot of it is really formatting, adding stuff from the old from the city code, or moving it from general licenses or reorganizing it. The second section is the general businesses. Say that one more time. General business licenses or permits. And again, I'm not going to go through line by line on any of this, but under this section, I do want to mention that there is, in addition to some of the things that were moved around, there is some updating that is happening to the actual cost of the fees. As you know, we've gone through a classification compensation study, which changed some of the hourly rates that our employees are earning, and therefore we have to recalculate the cost of staff time on some of these. So you will again see strike-throughs, red lines for any of the changes. The other thing that I will mention that is included in here for your reference, it is being discussed tonight, is the cannabis licensing fees. Those are included in here. Obviously, when we do the final draft, any changes that come up through that, we will incorporate in here. The next time you'll see this will be at a future agenda, either the 25th or December 2nd, probably most likely. In addition, there were several fees under here that stated that they were on a separate schedule. Those are really related to like the utility rates that you're going to be considering later tonight. So those are not included in this fee schedule. Those are in a separate schedule. I think also, I believe that this one has the hotel licenses that were just recently adopted as well. The third section relates to permit and plan or project review fees. Again, most of this was updated regarding staff costs, recovering that staff cost. There was one section on here, I think it's in this section, line 75, under the notes section, column F. We just need to strike through this. It says plus 76. It was just an error. It is the 1.28% of the job cost plus 84, not an additional 76. So that will get updated. And as I mentioned, there is some additional formatting that needs to take place on these documents for readability purposes and organizational. The fourth section are the community development miscellaneous fees. You'll see there's a lot of references to the city code that weren't in there previously, and then some updated costs associated with this. And last but not least, under the electrical permit fee, I'll mention that these fees are set by our third party that does those inspections. There were 2 fees that were eliminated, deleted earlier this year that we're just taking out. That was done by council action as well. So with that, if council has any feedback or questions, I know that we do have our department heads here to answer if there's any questions specific to fees that associate with their work. Otherwise, that's the presentation I have, and we will bring this back in final form with an ordinance at a future meeting before the end of the year as well.
All right, thank you, Ms. Olson. Are there questions or feedback from council members on the updated administrative fine or administrative penalties and fees and permit schedule? Councilmember Strong.
I just had some questions about, like, line 67 says animals, and it says vicious animal, barking dog, but there's no city code associated with that. Is there a reference into what situation would prompt a vicious animal or a barking dog, or is it referred to somewhere else?
Is this on the, I apologize, is
Penalties.
this penalties?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's
The first section.
Attachment 1.
This is something that the police department usually handles. I don't think that we've had very many issues. There is a code associated with our animal section. I believe it is, I'm not going to guess.
No, that's
I believe
okay.
it's in chapter 3.
That's what I was thinking as well.
We may want to make those code references
Yes.
if we can. Yeah.
And part of the issue with that was there was some definition issues that we're working within our recodification. So we didn't have the code section yet because they're also moving things around. But hopefully we'll have all of that information when we adopt this. And we will probably be coming back at a later date to pull it out because the recodification won't happen before the end of this year. So there will be an additional meeting for that.
And I mean, I think I really appreciate having the city code reference there, and I think it's really great for folks to be able to see and define, especially likely it's posted somewhere else. And I just was a bit curious about the one, let's see, where is it? Line 67 in attachment A, business license fees. Horse. What's a $5? What happens? How do I get a horse for $5?
From the city.
I do believe it is a license. And the other thing that I will mention with the recodification, there are some sections that we will be looking at more holistically, but this recodification is really just reorganization. As we've gone through the recodification process, there are a lot of things that we go, is that substantive? Do we want to really do that? Do we still need this? So things such as that, I don't, that might be a conversation in the future as well.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that horses were
think you can
permitted,
have
and
a
I wasn't
horse in
aware that
Roseville.
you could license one for $5. So
I seem to recall when we looked at the animal licensing section of the code, there was something in there about horses, but I couldn't tell you what it was.
I think it's fairly antiquated
Right.
reference back to
Yes.
the original
Yeah.
code, and we've never given a horse license as far as I'm aware since I've been here for 17 years.
We won't let people have goats. I don't know where a horse would go.
We won't let people have goats? Oh,
I had a neighbor that had goat. They don't anymore.
Remember our pygmy goat discussion?
I don't.
Those are
no.
pigs. Those are pigs. Sorry.
So no, I
Whole
really
other-
appreciate
whole other
the references, and I think it's really great for people to be able to reference back. So I think it looks great. I don't have a strong recall of what it looked like before, but I really appreciate the consistency, and I think that helps prevent some of the times when we've looked at violations of liquor license inspections and such, and it hasn't been all in the right place. So I appreciate that, and I'm sure our city attorney does as well.
Other feedback, questions, Councilmember Graff?
This is a very, probably just as random question, but under general business licenses and permit fees, 11 says conversation parlors, the license is $10,000. What is a conversation parlor?
That is in the code.
Councilmember Groff, that's an excellent question. I don't have a good answer. We do have a definition in our code for it, but I will fully admit I don't understand what it is. I believe at one point there was a reason to keep it in there. I don't know exactly the history of that.
Okay. And then one follow-up question, my very unscientific study of the code, of the fees, I have a contractor doing work, and I just said, are any of our fees higher than other similar suburbs? And he said, no, we were very reasonable. So that was my research that I did.
It's good to know. Good to know. Other questions, feedback? think as was alluded to earlier by Ms. Olson, one of the feedbacks that I provided earlier was looking at some further shifting of organization, because just as an example, in those administrative penalties, right in the area Councilmember Strawn was looking at on 67, 68, there was right after that, although it's under the heading animals, right after that is the late payment fee for utility accounts without its own heading. And so I don't think it's the animals are paying utility fees, for instance. So it just was a suggestion to take that next step to sort of try to consolidate things together by similar activities or similar departments of the city, or whatever makes the most sense to try to help group those in a way that maybe makes it easier both for staff and members of the public as well to kind of track that. So that was my thought.
And noting that as well, on the bottom of that same page, it goes fires, no open fires, fire code, fireworks, golf cart, illegal dumping. And licenses not occurring elsewhere. So I think just grouping things in a logical place so that someone might know. And then again, understanding what constitutes a golf cart violation. And I'm sure a lot of people would like to know how one is penalized for fireworks right about 10 p.m. on 4th of July. So
it's in our code.
10:30.
It's in our code, yes.
As is the golf cart and ATV penalty.
Yeah. But the references are really helpful.
Right. Yep. Right. Anything else on this? We look forward to it coming back on the 2nd, and then probably an action after the first of the year, once we get into the recodification seriously, not that we're not already seriously into it, but at least in front of the council to do what we need to do to pull it out. All right. Thank you, Ms. Olson. That brings us then to the proposed 2025 utility rates. And we've had a couple of touches on utility rates over the course of this summer-fall period, but here is the opportunity to see everything sort of in one package. We have, once again, our Finance Director, Michelle Petrick, with us this evening to bring us the proposed 2025 utility rate presentation.
So last month, we did have Ellers present the utility rate study. And just as a reminder, that study proposes a 5.5% increase in water fees, a 0% increase in sewer, a 0% increase in sanitary. So attached here is what our various rates would look like for single family and then non-single family. The base rates, then the consumption rates for water, then sewer, and then stormwater. In the case of sewer, we have a couple of accounts here for Maplewood. Maplewood has not yet adopted their fees. We will adjust this schedule when we receive their fees. And the recycling rates, in conjunction with Public Works, we've got a new contract in place for a recycling vendor. And we factored in half a year with the current vendor and half with the new. And so we're proposing a 3% increase in the recycling rates. So what does this mean for the single family home? Let's see if I can. All right. So for the single family home that has average water consumption of 12,000 gallons in a quarter and 11,000 gallons of sewer consumption, the quarterly change would be $5.29. The annual change would be $21.14. Or if you want to break it down by a month, the increases would be $1.76 per month to get clean water and storm coverage and recycling.
And that 2.58%
is
it applies to whether it's quarterly, annual, or monthly.
Yes.
It's the same percentage, right?
Yes.
All right. Questions from the council on the proposed 2025 utility rates or feedback? Great. Provide an opportunity for public comment, but I don't see members of the public in the chambers that may want to comment, although I should check with our representative, the person representing the 36,000 residents in the audience. Doesn't want to comment, all right.
Give you a thumbs up.
All right, we'll take that.
This did go before the Finance Commission and the Public Works Commission, and they both endorsed the fees.
All right, great. And this comes back before the council
Yes.
on the 2nd as well, 2nd of December.
Yep.
Right. All right, thank you, Ms. Petrick. We'll give your voice another rest.
This is my new voice.
The new normal. All right. Then we have item 7D, which is to consider to come back to proposed draft ordinances related to adult use cannabis regulations. And I was told by Pat that Ms. Gunlock may be introducing this item, but I don't necessarily want to put her on the spot if that wasn't the plan. Yep, it looks like it is.
She's running.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We were in front of you at your last meeting with draft ordinances. There are 3 of them: a zoning ordinance, a registration ordinance, and an events ordinance. Generally speaking, the zoning ordinance seemed acceptable to you. At least you had no revisions. We are bringing that to the Planning Commission on Wednesday for a public hearing. But there were numerous requests for revisions for the registration and temporary events ordinance. So myself and the city attorney reviewed your comments. The city attorney went ahead and provided updated registration and events ordinances. We wanted to get those in front of you as quickly as we could, knowing we're trying to get these adopted before the end of the year, and we only have a couple meetings left. Generally speaking, a lot of the information was relatively easy to address, and we can certainly go through those details, but I think there are 3 main topics that we still need feedback on before we can finalize the ordinances, and those are whether or not you want to do buffers. That impacts amendments to both the registration and events ordinance. The second item is the section in the events ordinance regarding fees for special services. The city attorney provided you some draft language or examples from other communities to aid in the discussion. And then the third item, which is fairly minor in the events ordinance, we still need to nail down whether or not you want to impose hours restrictions. You'll note a lot of the changes to the events ordinance were changes to make sure there was consistency between temporary cannabis events requirements and the general requirements in our special event policy. And so with the special event policy, there are already some duration requirements that we've included, as well as some hours requirements that we've included if amplified sound is being used. But there's still the overall issue of, do you want just general hours restrictions? So those are the 3 main issues we need feedback on, but of course, the city attorney, maybe myself, can help address any other questions you might have.
All right. Council, we've got that notation of the sort of the highlight of the items to discuss this evening. I don't know if the council has a preference as to what to take up first or just kind of dive into all of it at the same time. We certainly could divide things between sort of the events part of it and the registration part of it, if that makes sense. But I'm at the will of the council.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You want to do it by
Yes.
by part? Do you want to do the registration part first?
Sure.
That's easiest, probably.
All right. And I think on that, the primary thing was the buffer question, if I understand.
That's correct.
Okay. Councilmember Strawn.
So this is the only thing that I've actually had somebody reach out and ask a bunch of questions about. And this particular person is quite concerned that all the facilities would be migrated, would be in the same like strip mall or something, that there would be some affinity to, not necessarily competition, and that it could change the tenor of a neighborhood. Can you relate again what buffer zones we could put in, or how they would relate? I know we've talked about buffers in relation to schools, daycares, treatment centers, but in relation to one another, I guess is, or maybe the city attorney would be best.
I believe I'm being deferred to here.
I can answer it too.
Councilmember Strawn, the statute is a little bit vague on this point, but the Office of Cannabis Management has advised that they believe the statute permits the city to adopt buffers between cannabis businesses. That's not in this draft, but that would be fairly easy to add.
Okay.
A 500 or 1,000 foot buffer from one retail business to another, or whatever distance you choose. Just in this draft, you have a 500 foot and a 1,000 foot buffer. You could choose whatever distance you felt appropriate. And so we believe that it's not explicitly in the statute, and so I think it is a little bit vulnerable to legislative amendment. But at this point, we think that that's permissible.
And I'm not certain that this is reasonable, but this person's big concern was that they would be on the border of the bigger cities and that we would get their overage, that those that didn't, and so that the neighborhoods that adjoined Minneapolis and St. Paul would be the people who would be taking the brunt of that. I don't know that that's reasonable, but that was the concern that this person brought forward. But a 500 or 1,000 foot buffer isn't gonna probably even take them out of the same strip mall. They'll just all be right there. So,
well, Councilmember Strawn, I apologize. I wasn't intending to state that you couldn't have a bigger buffer. You could certainly have the statute's just silent on it. It explicitly allows you to restrict 500 feet from a park or school, or 1,000 feet. I get those two backwards. 500 or 1,000 respectively for the other uses. But if you felt like you wanted to do a mile or a mile and a half, again, with the cautionary note that the legislation is silent on this issue, you could adopt that buffer.
but it could be changed or amended at another time.
Of course.
And then just for clarification, as far as like liquor stores, we haven't had any restrictions on how close they can be to get to each other, or tobacco establishments or anything like that. So this would be setting a separate precedent for the cannabis locations, as far as we know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm not sure that that's unnecessary or needed, but just wanted to make sure clarifying.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and certainly I think the council, 2 discussions ago, sort of came to a conclusion not to have buffers in it. And then at our last discussion, we talked again about bringing the buffers back in. So I think we just have to figure out ultimately where we want to go. So that's kind of what this conversation needs to be about this evening.
Mayor Rowe, if you'll let me just remind the council that if you're going to cap the number of licenses, you're looking at a maximum of 3.
Right.
So just to put that into context for you as you're considering this issue.
I did have a question just in terms of if we look at some sort of spacing requirement between businesses, can that only apply within the city limits, or could we have a spacing requirement that says you can't be within a mile of a location in an adjacent city? Just of another business of the same type, without being specific to whether it's within the city limits of Roseville.
You
Because
know,
I think
Mayor,
that gets to that border issue.
yeah, Mayor Rowe, I haven't ever been asked that exact question. My instinct is to say that the reason for a city to adopt a buffer is to avoid a concentration of certain kinds of businesses in single locations, so that the area surrounding those businesses isn't disproportionately impacted by that type of use. For that reason, I think it's probably permissible for you to say from half a mile from any liquor store, or other cannabis retailer, even if it wasn't within the city limits, even if that other use wasn't within the city limits of Roseville.
Okay. And I was trying to think of similar situations where you might have something can't be so many feet from a school, and you've got a school like right on the border in the other city, and suddenly you can put things right next to it because it happens to be across the border. It would seem that doesn't make sense for what you're trying to accomplish. So I appreciate that explanation and helping us to understand that. Other thoughts or feedback from the council on buffers, either between businesses or between businesses and other entities? as has been discussed or has been sort of put back in the draft. Councilmember Groff.
The limited feedback I've had is residents are not concerned about this going forward. I guess most of them feel like it's going to be better because it will be organized and controlled, and then people will know what they're buying. They did think, the people I talked to thought that the distances that we have in here for schools and for, I don't know if you, can you hear me in the back? Because I'm, okay. For schools and for daycare centers and for treatment centers was reasonable. So that's what I've heard.
Councilmember Schroeder.
Yeah, I would agree with Councilmember Groff that what we have in here now with the schools and daycare and treatment facilities is reasonable, fairly straightforward.
I have to ask the council, is the concern with the distance from these types of locations that this is a sale of an adult age-limited product in that location so close to these other things? Or is it specific to cannabis retailers? Because, of course, we don't have any spacing limitation on dedicated tobacco stores or liquor stores in Roseville right now, and I start to think we're having some sort of double standard. So I want to understand what the reason, the rationale is for this spacing requirement, and wouldn't we want to also then apply it to these other types of age-limited sales establishments? Food for thought. Councilmember Etten.
I concur with you. I don't know if you actually came down on a line, but I'm not, I think our discussion 2 meetings ago came around to, well, they can buy cigarettes and they can buy alcohol. What's the real difference here? We got 3 of these establishments. The one caveat was the question about, say, a daycare facility right next door, right? And so that would be something that I would be willing to entertain how we could do that, but after that, I don't know what we're doing as far as creating a double standard for other things that people might see as kind of those negative social impact pieces. We're not having elementary school kids walking in the door buying alcohol or buying marijuana, right? So we know that.
Hopefully not. And hopefully not daycare kids either.
Right, but there's that question around that smell. That's where that directly adjacent, you know, if we were saying could not have a shared wall with a school facility or something like that, that would be the only thing. That would be the question.
Yeah, it's because the aroma of the product in that case.
That apparently is fairly potent.
Yes.
Coming, not just staying within a wall.
So that's a particular of concern to daycare centers, but not.
Well, anything that would share a wall.
Cosmetology
right?
centers, or I mean, I guess that's where what are we trying to regulate here?
Yeah.
Is the question.
It's the same thing that the city attorney talked about, the access and this exposure of youth.
So it's 2 things: exposure of youth, and I heard a lot about odor of product too, just in what I just heard.
Those are connected.
Okay. So it's the odor is a concern for the youth, but not a concern for adults. I mean, I'm trying to get to where we want to be here, and so I'm just asking the tough questions.
We have a member of the public here now.
I do see that. I understand.
I do support for sure the buffers of the schools that we had as written. I think that reflects, like we said, we've talked about many different ways that this could be, but I was comfortable with the way that is presented here. As far as, buffers bordering the cities, I haven't had a real strong preference for, have some concern about singling out one type of business and making that, but then there is that odor, and I guess more concerned about that that societal impression, for good or for bad, of what that looks like for some people. And so I think the goal in legalization was to take some of that stigma out of this process. And
Right.
so I don't know that I want to re-enter that stigma and put it in by saying there's a double standard, but
That is the struggle.
that is the struggle. I guess that is the struggle.
So 1,000 feet from a school, because of the potential, because it's age-restricted product, is that my understanding? Or is there other reasons behind it? All right, so then we have age-restricted products that are not restricted from being within 100 feet of schools, unless we add that in, which, I mean, if we want to have that conversation, we can do that too. But I think that just gets to the consistency question there.
Right.
I mean, if the 1,000 feet from a school specifically is related to the access to an age-restricted product, then we've got we've got two other age-restricted products that we allow sale of in this city that we don't have that same restriction on. It would seem to me either we do the same thing for everybody, and that is 1,000 feet, or we do the same thing for everybody, and there's no buffer.
And we are having, as the attorney reminded us, 3 businesses of this sort. So it's, if we needed to revisit this next year and adjust it, if there was some major issue that came up, which we probably will have to do, we could do it at that time.
Let alone the legislature changing.
Let alone the changes, who knows,
rules
so
for us, yeah.
it isn't like this is going to be done in stone tonight.
Right. But once again, I just am trying to get us to be
Yeah.
where we want to be.
Yeah.
So just asking some questions here. Other thoughts from Councilman? Well, then there is the 500 feet from a licensed daycare, park feature, or residential treatment facility, and I'm not sure if that's access to an age-restricted product or exactly what that is. I'm not sure. So I'm open to understanding that better if council members have thoughts as to why that restriction is in there.
Well, my thoughts on the treatment facility is people with addictions don't need more temptation right next door to them. But I
And the
guess
smell. It's
And
not
the
like
smell.
liquor is, a little bit, I mean, if you're in the liquor store, it's smelly, but, it's not as quite as smell of cannabis stays on you for quite a long time, so.
And do we have the choice to pick only residential treatment facility and not park feature, or do we have to pretty much have all 3? Ms. Tierney?
No, Mayor, you can do whichever, however. This is what's in there now is is the maximum allowed by the statute. You could reduce the distance, only pick one of those uses, pick 2 of these uses, whatever you see, however you see fit.
Okay. Councilmember Strawn?
I guess I would feel inclined to go to maybe the max because we are going to learn so much more. It's so much easier to give back than to take away. So, I mean, I think that's maybe why I was more inclined. And I think the daycare center and some of the other things in question. So, right, there has been a school at times in Harmar. And if another school went into there and we said, oh, but a cannabis business, if anything, really thrived in Harmar. But if a cannabis business said, yep, that's where I want to do business, then that would, prevent, I think we need to understand what that looks like. What if a charter school decided to take that voluminous space and become a bigger entity there? I feel like it's just easier to be more restrictive when we're still unsure. And I think one of the things was the smell and the wall and just understanding that, I don't know, it's much more pervasive than smoking and obviously vaping doesn't really have a smell that shares with others as much as tobacco or other things. I mean, it's not without.
You should go to a girl's bathroom.
I was just going to say.
Well, it's not without a smell, but it's less pervasive.
How much time do you spend?
Two female students have complained about separate bathrooms this week to me. I'm like, all right, it's Monday,
Yeah.
All right.
So, but it's not
Yeah, I
as
was just going to say
pervasive.
vaping is probably not without its own smell.
No.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to clarify too. So if there's an existing registered business in Harmar and a school subsequently moves into Harmar, this
grandfathered
doesn't cause the registered business to have to move out, right? I mean, this is only for new location
This is-
after the school is already there.
Because the school knows that there is that,
Well,
there,
I think
right?
we need to find out what the attorney says to be sure.
Mayor, you're correct.
Yep. So if the school comes second, then they can be located within.
Right, and,
500
but they
feet.
would know that that's there.
Right.
They had an option.
I see what you're saying.
Yes.
It's already there.
Yes. So then they're choosing knowing that.
Mhm.
Yes.
Or not.
Yes, or not.
Right.
Whereas in the case of the daycare where the old Mexico is, if a place went into the empty spot right next door, the daycare was there first, and they had, you know, they would be the person that could say, you know, the ordinance would allow them the opportunity to not share a wall with a cannabis
Well,
location.
the ordinance would prohibit
Right.
500 feet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Councilmember Etten.
I really think, other than that smell of those close locations, I don't see a reason to have a double standard. But I think you could go to a 100-foot setback or buffer and solve that problem without creating a whole brand new big 1,000-foot thing. It would acknowledge, here's the specific concern we have about this specific type of product. It would give a little bit of a buffer while not creating a whole big new situation.
So you'd make it, your suggestion is possibly to make it 100 feet from school, licensed daycare, park feature, or residential treatment facility.
Actually, residential treatment facility, I'd be ready to take that and go to the maximum, actually.
Well, that is
But
the
for-
500 then.
But for most of those, I think 100 feet gets to, 50 feet, gets to that common wall or that shared smell issue. And it does not create a massive, it says, here's this specific concern about this specific different age-restricted product.
So thoughts on the shorter distance from schools, daycares, and park features? And I'm not sure on the park features that they do share walls now. I'm not sure about that one, so
No.
we may have to think about that.
I think it might be the businesses.
Schools and daycares.
Schools and daycares.
Thoughts about that? Schools and daycares, shorter distance, potentially 100 feet. Councilmember Schroeder?
I'm not so sure 100 would be enough because of the smell. I mean, if you think about if you okay, what's 100 feet if you looked in this room? You know, how far is that, right? And so you think about how far does
It's farther than this room.
Yeah.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right, and
Yeah.
that's where I mean that's what I'm trying to think about is how, you know, if you look to see how far is that and how far would a smell travel basically. So that's the piece I'm wrestling with on that piece.
And we probably don't have the expertise
Right,
sitting,
right,
sitting
I know.
at this discussion that would tell us that
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, so.
Other thoughts as to whether that's a possibility?
Well, 100 feet isn't, it probably wouldn't travel, at least within a building.
Not in a significant odorous way.
I could go there, I suppose.
I would guess that this room is probably about 40 to 50
that-
square,
Yeah.
thereabouts. As it is.
This guy can
I was going to
estimate.
say it's more like 40.
Do you have one of those neat laser things?
Yeah, I
to
do,
check
but
the-
not in my
check the
pocket.
square feet?
It's probably his eyeball.
Those are pretty fun. I
The
like
tool of the realtor, one of the tools.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I do
of the
think
realtor,
the
yes,
visual
yes.
is kind of helpful
Yeah.
when people
It
want to
is.
say 100, so people
Well,
have
that's
an
why we always
idea.
draw circles
just
on
think
maps
of
when we're
twice
thinking about
this.
buffers and zoning.
Yeah, yeah.
Think of twice this.
Yeah,
and I
right,
think
right.
you're pretty close to it.
Yeah, I mean, that could be 2 or 3 side-by-side retail entities in a strip
Yes,
center.
if you're talking about strip mall, you're talking about 2 or 3
Right.
facilities buffering between them at that point.
Mhm.
I think I might though leave the 500 in there for a treatment center.
Yeah,
I-
no,
that's what I
I
read
think
from
there's a
Councilmember
specific
Etten.
different reason
Yes,
for that,
yeah.
having to do with
Yeah.
why are you in a treatment center and here is a probably a product that was part of your use.
Yeah, so I think if we left the treatment center at 500, I think you know, and I wrestle with, you know, since this is so new, you know, it's always easier to take stuff out than to put stuff back in. But 100 is still a good.
I do want to say that I don't know that we've ever been shy about putting stuff in when we need to. So that argument only goes so far, I guess, in my mind.
Well, if things are already here, then you can't. You
If
know,
the
you
business
can't-
is put in place.
I see what you're
the,
saying.
bu- the business is already there. You can't now say you have to move your business.
Right, which we just discussed relative
Right,
to the
that's what
Harmar
I'm
discussion,
saying,
right?
so-
If we start getting a bunch of complaints, we can't say, oh, well, let's change our minds.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
All we could do is potentially change it for the next
Next
prospective
person.
license.
Right.
Yeah, or registration, yeah. And we could, the 100-foot, if we want to look at a different number that we could,
I
Councilmember
was just
Strawn.
curious if we would permit it to be in our strip mall.
there are many cities that
No,
are
our-
getting.
Yeah, no, our strip mall.
Well, they're
that-
running their
it would
own.
be
But not
tenant.
running our own, but as a
It would be a
landlord.
tenant, and I guess landlords have the ability to consider whether to allow certain types of businesses in their spaces. I think we had that conversation in a previous one.
Mayor, certainly, a non-governmental entity landlord
yes.
has a right to choose who their tenants are. I think the city could probably choose that, but it definitely poses a question as to whether you would, if you have, for example, a tobacco store, then are you using different judgment in a way that's discriminatory? It doesn't cause me a lot of heartburn at all, but the argument could come.
Sure. And it may be a moot point a year or two from now anyway, potentially, but.
I would just want to make one clarifying comment if I could, Mayor and Council. Just looking at the zoning code, if you're concerned about schools and cannabis retailers locating in the same strip center, our zoning code does not allow schools to locate in our neighborhood mixed-use zoning districts. They can be in the core mixed use, which is like Rosedale and that area over there, but our neighborhood mixed-use districts like Harmar, like Lexington, schools are not allowed. Daycares are. And maybe that's a distinction, not necessarily a difference depending on the type of daycare versus school. But for whatever reason, our zoning code lists schools, elementary and secondary, is not permitted in our MU1 through MU3 districts. So those
That
would
helps the conversation.
create a
yeah.
conflict potentially.
Is that different than when there used to be that 916 or whatever that special school was in Harmar? You don't know if that's
Well,
changed?
and that may have been different zoning at that point
Yeah.
too, so,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's been a bit.
because that's up in Venice Heights now. Other thoughts on the registration side of things? I think the buffer was kind of the big discussion point. Ms. Tierney?
Just for a point of clarification, if you're finished with that part of the discussion,
Yes.
did
Are
you
we?
want? My understanding is you wanted to say 500 feet from a daycare, 100 feet from a school.
No,
No, 500 feet from residential treatment
Yes.
facility.
Yes.
Right.
Sorry, 100 feet from a school or a daycare. But I wasn't sure whether you had made a decision about park.
I think because the park is unlikely to share a site or a building, that the park kind of comes out of there.
Yeah, I'm fine with
We
that.
have regulations in our park about use,
Yes.
certainly.
Yes.
You can't do it in a park.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Right. Do we want to hear public comment on the registration side of it and then go to the event side of it, or do we want to save the public comment to the end but not adopt anything? Well, we don't have to adopt anything this evening. I think we're potentially going to have some stuff come back.
We're
anyway.
revising only.
Yeah.
We're advising, yes.
Right. Do we want to proceed with our advising about the special events and then come back to public comment?
Yes.
All right. Special events, lots of things, not the least of which also was buffers. Then we have the fees, and we have potential for hours for the event, noting that we do control hours for the amplified sound portion of event if that is part of an event.
Right. And that's consistent with our other.
So I guess first of all, on the events, and we've also already eliminated smoking and vaping as an option at events.
At an event, yeah.
For consumption.
Yep.
In previous discussions. So then for events, do we want to put in a buffer related to schools, residential treatment facilities, or parks with the events? Guess we'll hit that buffer topic first.
Might as well.
And what's in the draft on 319.08 is 500 feet from any of those.
Well, I would be in favor of the residential treatment facility buffer for the same reason as before. I think the temporary facility has harder, or a temporary event has a harder time affecting some of those other things in the same way.
Other thoughts from council members on that?
Yeah, I would agree with Councilmember Edmund.
Would a lack of definition mean that it could be out of school?
I think we had that conversation at our
Can't
last
be out.
meeting, and I think schools aren't able to have those events, if I remember right.
Well, they banned.
Mayor Rowe, I think we did look this up and did verify that schools were not a permitted location for a temporary cannabis event.
That's what I seem to remember, yeah.
Even a private school or and would the university, not that University of Northwestern would be high on our list.
I can look.
And I was going to say, schools may be defined in a way, actually, they may be defined in our own ordinance in a way that helps clarify that. Public school as defined under Minnesota Statute 128.05, or non-public school that must meet the reporting requirements in that same thing. It doesn't, to me, sound like a university or a college, but we have the ability to check that. But, so park feature, we don't allow the events in our parks already.
Yep.
Or
Can't
will,
be on
once we
city-owned
put this in
property.
place, do we need to ban or, keep the distance, the 500-foot buffer from park facilities for these events?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either.
All right.
So it could be across the street from the park?
I believe it could be if we don't put a buffer in there.
Could be across street from a park if it was a standing building and an ongoing business, so.
Then the other thing, maybe while the attorney is looking up the school question, was do we want to put in hours for the event, the general limitation on hours for a cannabis temporary event? Noting that at the bottom of that same page is the amplified sound time limit.
And that's consistent with our amplified sound ordinance. So
Yeah, it does seem that way.
covers those hours.
Yeah. Or our noise ordinance. Yeah. My only thought when I was looking at this is we may want to, for an event, just have sort of an end time where it doesn't go later than a certain time in the evening, just because at a certain point, sort of the dispersal of an event can be disruptive to the surrounding neighbors.
Yeah.
I don't know, the amplified sound is 9 p.m. Any day of the week, but I'm wondering if an event ending time might be 10 p.m. or something along those lines. I'm not 100% concerned about the starting time. I'm not imagining temporary cannabis events are going to start at 5 a.m., but I could be wrong. Thoughts from council members on hour limitations?
I would say a 10 p.m. stop.
Yeah,
I'd say 10 as well.
Good idea.
Because I do think you make a good point that you don't want to disrupt the neighborhoods and people leaving. I think that could be very disruptive.
Certainly with vehicles and people milling about and
Yes.
talking and
Yes.
excited about having attended the event and things like that.
Do you think we should do a start one just to be specific or not?
We could. I mean,
Like 9 a.m. or something?
the amplified sound is 7 a.m., of course. Now, granted, if we decide to start the event later than that, the amplified sound before that doesn't apply, but do we want to set a start time? We certainly could.
7 a.m. for amplified sound. Wow.
I think that.
On weekdays, I guess the theory being that people are, just like with other noises, that people are theoretically, a lot of people are getting up and going to school or work
Some
or
people work
wherever.
nights.
Yeah,
Well,
I know.
it's
I know.
9, the start date is 9 on weekends.
9 on weekends, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
so.
No, we're not revisiting that right now.
No, we're not. We can come back to a start time. How are we on the school research?
I think we have what we need on the school research. I want to check. I just need to make sure that the statute hasn't been updated.
Okay.
But it's kind of an interesting statutory gymnastics where it isn't specific to the cannabis event, but what the statute says is you can't use, possess cannabis flower, cannabis, all the list of cannabis things in or near a school.
What does
So-
near mean?
Well, let me give you the exact language rather than punt. Give me 1 minute.
Near is a little vague.
Near? Grover.
So what it says is, this is in the section of the statute regulating adult use of cannabis, and it says an individual may not use or possess cannabis flower products, lower potency hemp edibles, hemp derived consumer products in a public school or in a charter school, whether owned, rented, leased, and or all vehicles that the school district owns, leases, rents, contracts for, or controls. So I suppose there's a little bit of wiggle room there as to whether that would apply to a cannabis event, but I would certainly argue that that applies to a cannabis event. If you wanted to be crystal clear about it, you could put it in the ordinance as well.
But it would not apply to a private school. Because you said charter and public.
This says in a public school or in a charter school. That's what the statute says.
In our ordinance references 120A.05 as to what a school is, and that is an elementary school, kindergarten, middle school, secondary school, vocational center school for secondary students. So it sounds very much ending at high school graduation, if that's helpful.
So we could say, just as we do, may not be held on city-owned property, we could say may not be held on the property of a pre-K through 12 educational institution.
You could.
And just not have it on the property. Do we want any kind of distance buffer from school properties and or
This is
city?
already grabbing a fair amount.
All right.
I just don't see a lot of our schools taking this on.
The superintendent to speak to us on this
So
issue.
I think a one-sentence thing would clear up 98.9% of any of our concerns.
Yeah.
All right, so what I'm hearing is 500 feet of your residential treatment facility or on a school as defined, school property as defined in our definitions.
Sure.
All right? And we've already said that we don't allow the events in our city parks
Right.
Or any city
or city
property.
facilities. Okay.
Actually, this says city-owned property. Would that,
Okay.
when you get back to talking about our strip mall, would that,
Yeah.
for a
No event.
actual
So a temporary event, though.
bricks and mortar event though, would that, I mean, bricks and mortar store? Obviously, it's a separate section, but it's a legal product.
You're talking about for the use, or are you talking about for
But
the?
we should move on.
Okay,
Stormy.
I'm just trying to, I'm trying to track what you're saying.
Yep, let's move on.
All right. So it sounds like we've sort of come to the conclusion that we don't want to have these events within 500 feet, which is the maximum, I think, from a residential treatment facility
Yep.
or on school properties. And we've already, and maybe we need to come, add or on city properties at that same place or
Right.
put that restriction in the same place.
Yep.
The city-owned properties in paragraph 1, Mayor, did you want me to move that down?
Oh, it's right there.
It's
Okay.
number one.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking it was on another page. I'm sorry. I was scanning down the page and not up the page. My apologies. All right.
We,
and
we could put it as number 2 at the top, just the school part and the buffer down below.
oh, I see what you're saying. Have not allowed on city-owned property or school properties as defined.
Yes.
And then do the
Yes.
buffer for the residential treatment. That makes sense. All right. We had, while you were looking up the school stuff, we did conclude that we did want to put an end time on the hours of any event at 10 p.m. And we weren't sure on a start time limitation.
Mayor, could I go backwards just 1 second?
Sure, sure, sure.
Did you want to do a buffer from parks?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we had that conversation and
I think I was otherwise.
you were otherwise occupied.
You're reading law.
All right. I think that was the big event ordinance questions. Were there other items on the event ordinance? Or
The
Ms. Dunlop?
the fees for
The fee,
special
right,
services.
yes. So I seem to recall from our last conversation that there was a recommendation not to do a certain type of fee and a recommendation to do a certain type of fee. And I apologize that I don't remember what that was.
That was super quick.
There were two options in the prior draft. And that we had the choice to choose one or the other, and the attorney recommended one versus another.
Mayor, if I can just jump in for you.
Sure.
The question, so I pulled some other ordinances for you, and I think I can tee up this question better than I
Okay,
did last
please
time.
do. Please do.
You know, the first question is whether you want to charge fees for city services. So if the city is providing some sort of a service, whether it's parking control, additional police security, inspection services of some kind, do you want to charge fees for those services? And then if the answer to that is yes, the next question is, how are you going to set them? Are you going to set them based on, if you look at the St. Paul example, there's kind of a math formula in there. It's
Yikes.
Well, I mean, you would go to the union contract for the then existing union contract for the police, and you would add these costs to it. So you can do a simple, average hourly wage of the employee, or you could do just set the fee in your fee schedule every year. Here's how much we're going to charge for police time at cannabis events. Here's how much we'll charge for other services. Those are kind of the big two choices. Do you want to charge fees? How are you going to set them? And then there's the final question of, when do you want them to be paid? A lot of cities, when the number starts to get up there, and candidly, I have no idea if these are going to end up being big cost events to the city or not. But for a lot of cities with special events who are charging fees, when the number gets above a certain threshold, they ask for a deposit. Right. Some cities ask for 100% of the deposit. Some cities ask for 50% or some other smaller number and kind of true up at the end. But I'm sorry I didn't frame this better last time. But, so number one, do you want to charge fees? Number two, how do you want to set them? Number three, when would you like to receive the money?
Well, they're in our special events policy already that we do charge fees. And it's the hourly rate cost for any employee working. And that a cash deposit may be required based on basically whatever the city manager says. So it's a little vague, but yes.
And we could set the deposit policy as part of our fee schedule, I assume, where we say if there's a certain threshold, the deposit applies or something like that.
Right. So, yep, yes. But you can just follow your special event policy as well. If you look at line number 357, I've required as part of the conditions that they have to follow any policies related to special events, so that you can just defer to that policy as well.
And to what number?
What section? We don't have page numbers on this.
Yeah, I don't have page numbers. It's line 357, letter J.
Yeah. I don't have.
Do you have line numbers?
357.
No.
Oh, you're looking at the policy. I'm looking at the ordinance. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Are there not line numbers on your ordinance?
No.
Oh.
Oh.
What's the section? 31908.
Sorry, 31908, and then section J, or if you go to 319.09, it's immediately above the top of 31909.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's great.
So I would think you'd want it to mimic our special events policy.
Well, this directly
Right. that's
tells them
what
they
I
have to
mean.
do it.
So that makes sense to me. Yep.
Yes.
And we've already got those
I
right
do
in the
think,
policy.
though, if it, think it hits a specific threshold that we require all or part of the fee in advance, just so you don't.
And maybe staff can take a look on some of the non-cannabis special events that we've done in the past period of time. What have we been talking about in terms of those city costs, and come up with some recommendations as to what those thresholds ought to be, because maybe there's a certain threshold for 50% and another threshold for 100% as a deposit or something like that.
Yeah, because it's pretty big. And here it just says a cash deposit may be required before the special event occurs based on anticipated and potential cost to the city. So it's not spelled out, but it's there.
And that could be more detailed spelled out in the fee schedule.
Fee schedule,
Yep,
yes.
yep,
Yep. I think this is ready and just the nuance from
yep.
staff.
Right.
That's what I'm
On a
thinking
deposit.
too.
And I did figure out that in the last discussion, the note was that instead of looking at a specific fee and those rates, the city could just go back and charge actual costs after the event. And I think the recommendation was not to do that. That's what I was remembering from our last discussion. So we're already past that. All right, moving on then. Were there any other things that staff needed feedback on the event ordinance proposal? Doesn't seem to be the case. I do want to then provide an opportunity for public comment. So if there is anyone from the public here who wishes to speak to either the registration ordinance or the special event ordinance, or both, this would be the opportunity to do that. Just provide a quick outline of what the policy is for public comment. We do have a 3-minute time limit per speaker. We do ask that you state your name and address or street to begin your comments, direct comments or questions to the council, and we'll attempt to respond after all of the comments are done, although I don't know that we have more than maybe one person to comment, so it may be quick.
Could be two.
But with that, we'll open it up for public comment.
Good evening.
Hello, welcome.
My name is Frank Strawn. I live on Schreier Avenue. Just have a list of 10 communities here. Falcon Heights, Lauderdale, Little Canada, St. Paul, Shoreview, St. Anthony, Arden Hills, Minneapolis, New Brighton, and Maplewood. Does anyone know what those communities all have in common?
They border Roseville.
They all border Roseville. Yes, they do. It's about 870,000 people. Do you know what else those communities all have in common? They're all wrestling with these same issues that you're talking about here tonight. And I mean no disrespect when I say this, but I just sat through half an hour of navel gazing. We need to expand our view of the world. All of these communities are making decisions on the same thing, and everything they decide is going to affect Roseville. As we make our decisions, we need to know what they're deciding. I'm not saying we need to make the same decisions. I'm saying we need to have the knowledge of what they're doing so that we can make the best decisions for the people of Roseville. When we talk about not having a buffer zone between the establishments, fine. I don't care if there's 3 of them in the same strip mall. However, you have to realize that's going to mean people smoking marijuana in the parking lot. You can't tell me it's not going to happen, because you go to any liquor store parking lot in Roseville, you'll find empty beer bottles, empty liquor bottles, and there's a good chance, depending on the time of day, you'll see people drinking. It's not something, it's a livability issue, and it's not something that our police department can police while they're taking care of the other things in Roseville. You spread these out, you have less people to commit these offenses in one place. Be that as it may, I'm not asking us to be Minneapolis. I'm not asking us to be Little Canada or Shoreview or any of these other places. I just want to make sure that we extend our gaze beyond the borders of Roseville so we know what's happening and we know what's coming. Because Minneapolis and St. Paul make decisions. Someone can't get a license there. They're going to come to the nearest place that their customers from Minneapolis and St. Paul can get to. And those places are going to be Lexington and Larpenteur. Easy place to get into and keep going. They're going to be along the Cleveland Avenue corridor over there. Easy off the freeway, back on the freeway. They want to make money that way, that's fine. Do the people of Roseville need that extra traffic all in one spot in their neighborhoods? I don't know. But I'm just asking this council to look beyond Roseville to do what's best for Roseville. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate that. And I think points well taken. Is there other public comment on the proposed ordinances this evening? All right. And just to be clear too, I think we do need to bring these back with the updates and draft changes and things like that, so we're not prepared to adopt something this evening. With that, is there anything else the council wants to or needs to add to the conversation before we bring this item back for further consideration at a future date? Well, one of two future dates. Doesn't appear to be the case. All right. Very good, then. We'll bring these back at one of our two remaining meetings this year for final consideration. All right. That then brings us to the highly controversial topic of the 2025 City Council and EDA meeting calendar. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we tried to represent for 25 kind of the same pattern that we've used in the past. And I'll be honest, I was chatting with the mayor that traditionally it's been the second, third, and fourth Monday, but over the years we've tinkered with that because of holidays or other council needs. So it doesn't follow that exact rule. I would note that if we would have done the second, third, and fourth Monday in April and May, we would have 6 meetings in a row. And so I did take the liberty to break that up and shift it down so we at least have a 1-week break in there. So what's in front of you is kind of the standard approach that we do. We typically try to have 3 meetings with the middle meeting as a work session. It doesn't work out all the time. And traditionally in the summer, we take a slightly different schedule. We meet more earlier in the month because of Rosefest parade, which this year is June 23rd. We don't have a meeting that night. Then we look in July to get back on track with 3 meetings, but in August, I think the council consciously, in the past at least, have said let's have 2 meetings, although we have that commission interviews in the middle there, just to reflect the end of summer and people going on vacations and things like that. But then we get back into the heart of fall here, and September and October we have 3 meetings. November, once again, I think has changed over the years, and we have 2 meetings. I know in the past we've tried to avoid the week of Thanksgiving, try to meet the week after. This year we're meeting the week of Thanksgiving, the Monday of, and I think the 24th would be the same thing there. So any of these, and then I would note we have 1 meeting in December, and this year, year 25, it would happen to fall on December 1st. But any of these can change. We can always call special meetings along the way. It seems, generally speaking, the cadence seems to work for the amount of things. We don't have too much of a backup of things unless it's at the end of the year. We have more limited meetings, but we can usually get that done. So this is what's proposed. This is what draft, and I would mention the EDA is included on this, and we try to meet on a quarterly basis around a work session time and date. So with that, I will pause, and like I said, this is something that we don't necessarily need to approve tonight, but just by the end of the year. But this is based off the past practices, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And like I said, it's open for revision if you would like to.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Feedback on the proposed schedule for 2025.
I think you should have as
Councilmember
many
Evans.
meetings in a row.
I knew he was going to say it.
I
think 6
hear
sounds
all
like
of
a
your
great plan.
conflicts. Yes.
Remember, I'm helping you do a little bit. No? Okay.
That being said, any serious recommendations from other council members who will be here next year?
Well, I think
Councilmember
it's worked in the past. I think this rhythm works, and it works for our budget planning, so I don't see any reason to change it.
Right, other thoughts? I wanted to express appreciation for not having 6 meetings in a row.
Yes.
I'm sure that staff shares that appreciation.
Sure they do.
So that makes sense. So this will come back then for final consideration, but unless we want to adopt it this
Tonight,
evening.
you can do it tonight if you'd like, then we can start advertising it.
I just had a question. I know a while back there was a question about, I don't even remember how long ago or who brought it up, about the city staff requesting, that it was really arduous at times to have 3 meetings in a month, and would there be a possibility of having less I don't see any change in the cadence. Is that still something of consideration?
Well, I don't recall when staff directly brought that up. I think oftentimes cities do have two business meetings, and then have a work session. And so we've kind of had our work session. We try to keep it as a work session, but oftentimes we do make some decisions there. That is ultimately up to the council. I think what works right now is working, that we have enough meetings to get business done. I would be a little concerned about 2 meetings a month, maybe stacking some things up. But it's hard to know each year what things come up. You know, the thing that does cause a log jam oftentimes are land use approvals that take a lot of our time. We just haven't had a lot recently, so we've been relatively good. But having some of those come forward in future years could really mess up some meetings and delay actions and stack things up for future meetings. So I think my sense is we keep it as shown on the proposed schedule.
Does council want to make a motion?
I would move approval of the
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder to adopt the 2025 proposed meeting schedule as presented. Discussion on the motion, Councilmember Groff as the maker.
No, as stated, I mean, this can be changed, obviously, if we don't need a meeting some month, but my thoughts on it are that I would prefer having the meetings and having them be a little shorter and timely than to have things pile up and we meet until 10 o'clock at night on some issues that are important. So that's my logic.
Councilmember Schroeder is the seconder.
Yeah, I would agree with Councilmember Groff on that, so. Yeah.
All right. Any other discussion? Councilmember Bratton?
I've been
No?
chastised.
All right. All right.
He's going to abstain.
Does he even get to vote?
Yeah, what voting?
Oh, yeah.
He's still a council member.
He is.
All right. With that, we have the motion before us to adopt the 2025 proposed meeting schedule as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have our schedule.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. That brings us to consideration of council and EDA meeting minutes. We have both EDA and council minutes from the 14th of October. We also have the council minutes from the 21st of October. Are there any additional changes or corrections that are needed to any of those minutes, or a motion to adopt one or more or all of them?
I would move to adopt them all.
Second.
All right, so moved by Councilmember Schroeder to adopt all 3 sets of minutes, seconded by Councilmember Groff. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those minutes are approved as presented, and that then brings us to the consent agenda. We'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon to introduce those items for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 10A approves payments in the amount of $979,212.15. Item 10B approves the purchase of recycling carts from Toter EVR2. As approved at the October 7th meeting, the city will now own recycling carts as part of the switch to waste management for recycling services starting July 1st, 2025. This action also approves the purchase of a large dewatering pump to assist city maintenance staff to repair large water main breaks, assisting pumping at our lift stations and dewatering large stormwater ponds. Item 10C approves entering into a cooperative services agreement with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to assist the city with our deer management program. As part of this program, we will be requesting 40 removal tags from the Minnesota DNR. Item 10D approves an agreement with J&M Display for fireworks scheduled for June 28th, 2025 as part of the Roseville celebration at a cost of $20,000. Item 10E approves the final contract acceptance of the work done as part of the Long Lake Lift Station project and authorizes final payment to the contractor for their work. Item 10F approves entering into a professional services agreement with Brown Intertech Corporation for geotechnical exploration for the city's 2025 construction projects. Item 10G approves a resolution requesting SCORE recycling funds from Ramsey County. While it is not certain what the amount the city will receive, we did receive $79,983 in SCORE funding in 2024. And finally, item 10H approves the extension of the contract with Time Saver Offsite Secretarial Services for recording minutes of the City Council and City Commission meeting. The extension of the contract will go through December 31st, 2025, and includes a rate increase of slightly, or exactly a 3.5%. And that is the consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Is there a motion related to the consent items?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those items are approved or accepted. That brings us to the future agenda review, and we're trying to make sure Mr. Trudgeon can keep up with the fast pace here. Mr. Trudgeon, can you go through the upcoming meetings?
It's a test of his skills.
Yeah. So we have a special city council meeting next Tuesday night, November 12th at 6 p.m. That is to canvass the general election. Expect that to last just a few minutes. The following evening on Wednesday, the city council, along with department heads, will meet late afternoon into the evening for our third session of the strategic planning discussion from 3 to 7 p.m. We'll be at the Autumn Grove Park Building here in Roseville. So I'll send a reminder again next week on that, but 3 to 7, same time, but just at a different location. On the 25th, at the end of the month, we'll have a special EDA meeting, or not a really special one. That's kind of around this time we try to do it. It could be special, I suppose,
special.
maybe topics, but
Kind of rude.
what we'll mainly talk about is the housing needs assessment progress update, the study with Stantec, and just kind of a check-in of what they've done so far. It's still in progress, obviously, but just get a check-in. And then we'll have the EDA officially approve the 2025 EDA meeting calendar, which you just approved as a city council. Later that evening, then, we'll have our public hearing for our budgets for the EDA and city and the levy. We are scheduling at least the approval of the cannabis ordinance on the 25th. As a reminder, we do have to publish notice on that, so we'll publish the notice on that. And obviously, if it doesn't pass that night, we can come back on December 2nd. But we thought it might be a good chance to get that done, move beyond that discussion. We would have the initial discussion of legislative priorities. We'd also have Park and Rec staff here to talk about the Natural Resources Management Plan, just to consider that and hopefully look to approve that. And then look to approve a myriad of business license renewals at the start of the year. There are some we'll hold back, and I'll get to that here at the, we're talking about December 2nd meeting. We also want to have the council consider approval of the wayfinding signage plan. If you remember, as part of ARPA dollars, we put some dollars aside for wayfinding signs. Been working with the Visit Roseville Visit Roseville board and having those signs based off their study. We had to make some changes because the county and state will not allow the signs originally proposed, and we're talking more of a pedestrian level sign that will really connect our parks and areas for walkers and bicyclists. So more to come on that, but that's the general summary of that. And then we have a couple abatements coming for a couple properties. The December 2nd meeting, that is our last scheduled meeting of the year. We'll have a pretty full agenda. We'll consider the approval of the EDA and city budget and levy, look to adopt the 2025 fee schedule that we saw tonight, also approve the 2025 utility rates. I don't know if I'm being optimistic, but approve legislative priorities. We may want to have that go into January for new council members, but certainly an option. We have approved cannabis ordinance just in case you don't get it done on the 25th, but we'll take that off, obviously, if we don't. We have alcohol and tobacco compliance failures. We have 7 alcohol compliance failures and 1 tobacco. So we'll have to go through that. You unfortunately have a lot of experience in doing that. Disappointing to see. I am holding back those licenses for approval for the next year, so you can consider the penalties as part of that. And then last, but certainly not least, is the hotel licenses. We are actively very busy going through the hotels. We've completed most of the inspections. We do know that all the hotels will need some corrections based on our inspections. And so we'll probably be bringing back a case that will look at all of them and maybe consider some conditional approvals with a certain timeline for them to get corrected. And there might be some other ones with some different recommendations as well. So more to come on that, but we could hit that mark because starting January 1st, 2025, we need to be licensed to operate a hotel here in the city. So a lot more to come on that, and I'll try to provide council some background because there's a lot of information coming at you all at once. So we'll have some conversations about that leading up to it. And that is the future agenda. That's the rest of the year.
Wow, and a busy rest of the year, as we can see. We're cramming a lot into a couple of meetings there. All right, questions from the council on future agenda or items that council members might like to request for future meetings, or reports or announcements from council members? Doesn't appear to be the case. Before we get to the motion to adjourn, just wanted to note that tomorrow is Election Day in Roseville and across the country. And certainly we encourage everybody to get out and vote, and encourage you to bring a friend or two or three or family members or whomever to join you in that civic duty. And next Monday, we don't have a meeting because it is Veterans Day. And as we're doing our civic duty to vote, we can remember then the veterans who have served our country in preserving that right that we all have to vote. So with that, other announcements or communications?
Just thought at the Visit Roseville board meeting last week, we do have a new CEO, Lisa Nowak, and she's been an employee for several years and used to work at Rosedale, so we have a very good transition going on because Julie Warren had been there 18 years, and so it'll be some, I say, new opportunities. Changes, okay, so. But we are having an event to thank Julie for her service.
Yeah, later or a little bit later this
And
month.
a lot of the discussion was about the motels because obviously that directly affects Visit Roseville. But they do understand it. My general impression was they understand the necessity of why we're doing this, and they are on board. So just wanted to report that to the council.
Thank you, Councilmember Groff. Any other announcements or communications? Otherwise, a motion to adjourn is the only remaining item on our agenda.
I'll move.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Ratten to adjourn. No discussion on a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is unanimous, and we are adjourned at 7:51 p.m. Thank you, everyone.